Oh, wow, that's crazy. For some reason, my OBS's settings completely like reset. So like, I don't know if you guys can hear my game then. That's interesting. All right, cause that's wild.
黒金直人
Is there like, okay, you guys. All right, yeah. So my sound is coming through. I had to make sure my stream was working. So I always have Twitch open on my phone just to make sure. You know what? Let me not do Naruto. Let me do S instead because this is the easiest way for me to. No, I'll do Naruto. Talk about characters that
黒
I'm
金
aware
直
of
人
compared to characters that
アズ
I'm
ラ
still
エル
okay with, but needs work. Okay.
さっさと始めよ
See, wait for people to hop in. Cause
臆すな
if we're
退屈だ
interested, I don't mind chatting it up a bit.
うさっさと始めよ
臆すな退屈だ
うさっさと始めよ
臆すな退屈だ
See who's all here.
うさっさと始めよ
臆すな退屈だ
うさっさと始めよ
Alright, so in about 2 minutes, I'll start talking. But for whoever's in the chat, how y'all doing? How goes things? Before I probably
うさっさと
I
始め
could
よ
probably start, put up music, but I don't think I will actually.
臆すな退屈だ
うさっさと始めよ
臆すな退屈だ
No, I'm just a dog behind a computer screen. How you doing, Cryo?
うさっさと始めよ
Just move that right there, actually. Fine, it's fine. Okay, just gonna wait for It's been a minute, so 60 more seconds, and then I have to go in an hour and like 35 minutes. Uh,
さっさと始め
so
よ
how goes things? Because I have an entire itinerary of things that I want to talk about. So people pull up and want to ask questions, they can. If not, then I mean, it is what it is, really. But am I coming in nice and clear? That's what I actually find important.
うさっ
Because I
さと
believe
始
that
め
I
よ
did on my when I was listening on my phone just to make sure. But I want to come in clean, concise, uncut for all of y'all. We can talk
臆
about
すな
this
退屈だ
because I'm gonna hop over to our itinerary real quick, unless people want to know.
うさっさと始めよ
Because I suck at overlaying things on top of another thing. Because if that's the
臆すな
case,
退屈だ
add. Eh. It's fine, because then I could just
うさっさと始
turn
めよ
things on and turn things off as I please. Alright, it's been 2 minutes. Alright. So, I asked on Twitter, and apparently people think I'm like smart enough to talk about these types of topics. So while I have my stream on my phone in the background with the music down, just to make sure I'm doing everything right, I'm gonna show the itinerary for today. Let me just close this so y'all can't see it, and boom. So what this is a Google Doc that I threw together at first.
うさっさと始め
We'll
よ
take it from the top. Drum roll, please. I'm about to talk sweet forever how long I feel. Well, which turned into like an hour and 30 because wifey wants to watch a movie. So, I mean, it is what it is. About fighting game concepts and just general CF applications to system mechanics that I may or may not be
臆す
entirely
な
knowledgeable.
退屈だ
Oh no, I just started Onyx
さっ
because
さ
I
と始
believe
め
that
よ
I'm smart. I think I know what I'm talking about to at least some innate degree. Otherwise known as I don't know what I'm talking about. AKA, I'm probably better than I think. My reads are insane. I really am him. You've seen it happen. AKA, how I turn people into Twitter clips because my execution is kind of funny sometimes. Read
臆すな
passable.
退屈だ
AKA, Naoto Kurganian-esque could carry me through college twice. Except no. And no, I'm actually just that nice. I pilot when necessary into the greatest game ever thrown out MP4. So, we're probably gonna laugh. We're gonna think. And before the end of this, or possibly by the end of this, you have some sort of takeaway from this because this is the first time I've ever done anything like this. The last time I made any sort of guide-related thing was a 3-hour poorly edited PS4 stream Naruto guide that I got rid of because it kind of sucked. And that might be redone soon. The fact that I'm doing this before I got to that says a lot. So, our
臆す
itinerary.
な退屈だ
Movement, how to move properly and or better. Because proper movement and better movement kind of fall under two different dichotomies. Let me turn myself to offline or visible. What is Gamestate advantage or
臆すな
positional
退
advantage?
屈だ
What do you mean by the proper utilization of system mechanics / when and when not to use them? The Fenrich theorem, I like to call it. Or, I better not catch you bursting within the first 10 seconds of a game. I will fight you. I'm legally obliged to rob you on the spot. Cutting combos early between getting damage and locking your opponent out of certain system mechanics, mental stack, and active and passive defense, and finally the life lead. Because there's a lot of things in this where people tend to struggle with certain ideas on how to implement their game plans in a not fair, but in a
臆すな退
concise
屈だ
and consistent way, so they tend to fall into common pitfalls. And in that, I'm talking about myself. It could apply to you in this game, in any game, because a lot of these things apply to plenty of games. It's just the game's contextual instances vary. Yeah, I left the game audio on. I just, because I just tabbed out. So now we got that out the way. Go back to that. Okay, so
さっさ
I'm
と
gonna have
始
my
めよ
Google
う
Doc open on my phone just so I don't lose my place either. So let's take it from the top. Movement and how to move.
臆すな
So
退屈だ
beyond like whatever discourse comes with movement or teching or catching techs or catching defensive responses, that's another thing I could talk about, but my itinerary is a little bit loaded, and to be fair, I could talk about that when I'm talking about other things. Obviously, common movement. A lot of characters in this game are blessed with forward runs, some better than others, some blessed with multiple air options. Your Azrael, or I mean, sometimes your Tager, and that's a sad life, but that's the life you chose. Movement in BlazBlue is really dynamic because there's a lot of obvious ways to approach your opponent.
臆すな
However,
退
there
屈
are
だ
obviously incorrect ways of trying to maintain or gain space all the time based on not only your opponent's character but the situation at hand. Obviously, like, let me switch to Jin because Jin is, funnily enough, a very, very good example of a character that doesn't necessarily have, the fastest head and vuln anti-airs, but a lot of his tools are able to target multiple ways of approaching the opponent, and that in itself is important.
さっさ
So
と
like,
は
you got your jumps, your double jumps, knowing how to use air momentum, but let's talk about what you shouldn't be doing a lot. Obviously, mindlessly air dashing is bad. Like, we all know this. Doing in like that is really, really bad. Obviously, mainly because when you air dash, or especially in this game, instant air dash, you can't barrier at all. That's why dash jumping is so good, because it allows you to alter your trajectory without committing hard to an air option that will probably lose to a ready opponent. That said, it's not saying that air dashing is obviously bad, but you really need to think. If Jin is like doing this, like Jin 5C is a funny button because it's multi-purpose. It's this great spacing tool, poking tool.
さっさと始めよう
But if we turn on the hitbox display, okay, we could see that it's also hits really damn hard. It is a makeshift anti-air if you know how to position yourself. You don't want an IAD, press a button into it, and that's another thing we could talk about in regards to movement and button placement. Obviously, you're not going to swing into this. What up, Lau? If Jin is doing 5C in this position, what do you believe the best option is here? He's applying. He's stating his presence on screen. I mean, if you know your buttons, you can probably counterpoke this. IDing isn't bad necessarily, but IDing to button against early frames 5C will get you cooked, and then counter hit 5C, 6C turns into like 3.4k plus a mix-up or just a really strong knockdown. By the way, hello, monkey. So, in this regard, sup, Edge, thinking about
さっ
how
さと始めよう
forward movement is applied in these types of situations, because
さっさと
funnily
始
enough,
めよう
Naoto does the exact same thing. I love it when people just fly at me from half screen and I do this. Because guess what? If they're IDing, odds are they can't, well, not even odds, they're not able to barrier. They have to whiff a button first, which is why you see a lot of people air dash JA to barrier immediately after air dashing so they don't get caught lacking. Things like this. Oh, it's stuttering? That's tragic. Just like minor things like that to take note of. Honestly, no. Like, anti-air 5D is like crazy. Because it not only catches late jump out, it catches some deep jump ins if you're ready. Like, I've had instances where I've seen Ragna players try to JC into my 5D as it's coming out and they just take 5k because of it. It's because I'm kind of sick with it, to be completely honest. But you know, things like that. It's like when people, funnily enough, I could talk about, now I get to talk about this. It's like how people complain about S. Alright. And granted, this character is, let me just change my color because I feel like yeah, sure, we'll just rock with this. People will like, oh, no worries. But hey Lucy, but like people will jump and air dash at S blindly, get hit by 6B, and then immediately complain about how good 6B is. My brother in Christ, why are you air dashing like that? There's other forms of movement. And this is the thing, because I get caught lacking doing the same thing. I sometimes turn my brain off and I'll air dash it to S6B and then it doesn't like register like it's AOL dial-up. Like, oh, I shouldn't probably be air dashing here. There's other forms of movement. What are these other forms of movement? Dash jump. Unironically. Gotta try to ID before fireballs and still get owned by... Exactly. I'd rather you do that. But, oh, I get to talk about that. Don't worry. Like, alright, 6:30. I have an hour 15. Okay, that's cool. So, think about it like this. What other forms of movement, like dash jumping, can handle 6B? Yeah, it's just not your turn, but now she's forced to commit to something to keep some semblance of advantage. Unironically, think about it. What is S doing off of 6B on block? What can she do? She can't jump. You're stuck doing fireball. You're stuck doing Mordred. You're stuck doing Gawain. And if you do 6B boars, you're insane. You know what? I keep forgetting. I've like all this stuff at my disposal. Frame data. Look at that. We have a frame data tool too. Oh, right. I have to keep that open. -8. 0. Like, if you jump into it and block it, I'm pretty certain there's, like, some advantage. Like, oh, yeah, I have to barrier this, too. Blocking, block type, barrier. See? Shit like that. What do you do to punish anti-air fireball? So, here's the thing, right? Let me do this. I'm definitely gonna mess this up. But I will... like this, right? I was minus because I whiffed. So I set to block. Alright. Set down back. Boom. She can't keep her turn. Second fireball is always -5. See? See? She's -6. Unironically, you either air instant block, or you just block them. Her turn is done. It becomes harder for her to try to press advantage. If she does one fireball, like... -3. If you air barrier... -10. Like her turn is like done, because if she tries to commit to the double fireball mix-up, it's minus. You can just start pressing buttons into her. If you stagger them, the gap is bigger. So it's things like that. It's why dash jumping is like literally doing this is so good because characters have to use alternative tools to try to catch the angles of approach. It's why Naruto 6D is as good as it is because it hits it away and it hits at an angle where if the opponent does not have a move that directly goes down or down at an angle when they're trying to escape, they're not going to hit him. S6B functions in that way too because it hits the entire space in front and somewhat above her. So it does the important thing of catching jump outs in the corner, something I get to talk about when we talk about positional advantage. So what does this have to do with movement? And in situations like that, because thank God these 2 points segue into each other. If you're in the corner and you got like, dash barrier, the system is going to help you. The system will carry you. And it allows you to either super jump out, like super jumping around in neutral is super good because you get to change your trajectory. Something people need to start doing, and something that's really indicative of proper movement, is knowing how to use your secondary movement options. I have a poor habit of backdashing or sometimes air backdashing out of situations because it's a panic response, right? But what if in any situation I just do this or do this? The second jump is obvious for what it does. It beats anti-airs. It baits anti-airs that either like mainly 2C, sometimes 6A anti-airs, whatever anti-airs that don't reach to the goddamn moon, it's going to beat them. You have to anti-air late. Because if you anti-air early, you throw yourself into recovery, and then the person who's stuck in the air can actually decide to come down with a button. You don't come down with a button early, because if you come down with a button early, there's a chance that you will get smoked. That's something I see a lot of people do. People will be put into air situations, and the first response is to press a button. In situations like, say, this. And say, like, randomly, you're in a situation, you get hit, you tech, and you see the SJBB. Or in situations where, like, you tech, you're above them, right? What up? Say you tech and you're above them like this. Is your first response to barrier on the way down because barrier is the safest option, or you're gonna swing a button into it? You're gonna swing something into an active hitbox. At best, at absolute best, depending on the button, it will most likely trade, and at worst, you get fried. Like, thinking about it in that instance is really important. Because in this type of situation, I've already used up my secondary air option. And in even sometimes using your secondary air option like that is also bad because now you're trapped up there. Granted, the mental stat becomes lessened because now you have to fear like what? Command throws and air throws if you just sit up there. Some characters shouldn't be up there. Like, funnily enough, as mobile as S is in the air and she has really cranked out buttons, like you see that JB and JBB? You see that? You see this? It does my taxes. This got me through college. Not the character. If I had this button in real life, nobody could touch me. But then you think about the character. You think about how her air dash functions, gates her out of certain things. You think about fireball. You think about air fireball. You think about all the lockout and stuff like that. And then you realize that sometimes air dashing as an approach isn't bad, but you want to know what is just as equally as good as an approach? Jumping straight up. Or at an angle. Unironically. You'll see Ragna players do like up 4JA because it does roughly the same thing. It covers a specific space. It is a fast air-to-air button that beats either like jump outs or people trying to jump into them. It is a nice air-to-air, decent air-to-ground. But you have to realize that the movement option between that is also what carries it. You're not going to see Ragna do this like that. You're going to see it do JC. But this also gets into like deep jump ins and other things, and I don't think that's on my itinerary, even though it can be. So when you think about forward movement, I need you to think about the air dashing. Like, you can have the luxury of having an extra air dash, but now the thing is, you're stuck up there. A lot of these characters don't have a lot of fast ways to get back to the ground unless it's tied to a system mechanic. Like, in examples, Bang Nails is a really nice example because he'll stick himself in the air, but then he'll throw either A nail or D nail and get back to the ground. Admittedly, yes, that costs something, but the fact that the option is there is very important. It then also disallows your opponent from moving around you, which is funny because that goes into my second point, which, alright, I should probably get into a bit. Backwards movement. I'm gonna tell you something. Yeah, B nail is like ridiculous. B nail and C nail are like mad good because it halts approaches, or his nails put him on the ground, which is what you want. But now I get to talk about the other thing. Somebody told me something important, and Chaotic told me this too. Say hi, Chaotic. I know you're in chat. Again, I'll pick a character with a slightly smaller air dash, or one that doesn't, well, a character that's not floaty. I'm gonna tell you something right now. Why are you moving around like this? I've seen people do it. I used to do this for years. What do you gain from doing this? You are not playing Smash. You're not playing Falco. You are not playing Fox. You're not playing Melee. Why are you doing that? What do you gain? Moving around unnecessarily in like box jumping, or like just doing a whole lot of unnecessary movement instead of not necessarily plotting out your areas of approach, because you don't want to be too automatic. You don't want to be too on the cuff. Don't want to be like, oh, this, I will do this. A lot of these responses don't have to be automated, but what matters is the way you're gaining and giving up space, because a lot of people will just do that a lot. And backwards movement isn't necessarily bad, but what does the form of backwards movement you are doing do for you in the long term? I have walked people down because they kept trying to air backdash away from me. I've also been fried by people because I'm air dashing button far too much, and again, there's lockout. Again, I'm doing unnecessary movement to try to make space, but it's not done in the proper way. Standing your ground sometimes, or just sitting, doing that, or just walking. This is why I emphasize walking so much. Do that. A lot of over elaborate movement leads to people positioning you in a way where you can't respond, and that's the last thing you don't want to do. The amount of space you control with your character, depending on what character you have, by simply functioning and moving within your character's function is fine. It's all different for everyone. Azrael players will backdash whatever, but if you look at some of the better Azrael players, you'll watch them walk in place or just dash jump. You won't see them do a whole lot of unnecessary movement because you start giving up your space. And in a fighting game environment, no matter what game you're playing, it could be Marvel, it could be CF, it could be Tekken, moving too much can be just as much of a negative as trying to rationalize your movement, is what I'm trying to get out. Because now you're trying to move too much, you're trying to do too much, and that's something I noticed I did in moving just enough to position yourself in a way where you don't have to make unnecessary movements. You don't have to always air dash. You don't have to super jump all the time. Dash jump regularly, preserving your air momentum to catch anti-airs or button attempts. Knowing how to place your buttons from stopping your opponent from doing X, Y, or Z. That's all movement. And it goes into my next point, which is real. Edge Dark understands. Real. So, point 2. The thing that I've been talking about for like almost 2 years now. Game state and positional advantage. The reason why I talk about this a lot, and to give a bit of preamble, there is a very specific video I watch from a competitive Pokemon player named BKC. It is called Why Prediction is Overrated. And that was one of the most like accurate videos I've ever watched, because the main takeaway from it is simply, why do you have to put in more work than your opponent to beat them if you have advantage? And common sense would dictate I'll just do this. Like, say I'm in this type of situation, right? I'm gonna have to close all this shit, which means, yeah, say I'm in this position, right? S is below 34%. I'm above 34%. Let's say, for the sake of the argument, overdrive is there, but I'm standing right here. What do you think my options are to enforce myself to stop her from either trying to get out or like just preying on certain responses? What do you think my responses are, realistically? That's real, but I'm not about to throw away whatever Popeye's money I am just to flex on these niggas. Sometimes, not all the time though. Like, Kobe, you understand this a lot because the way you play, you tend to do what I'm actually talking about. You're just extremely wild when it happens. Like, when you make it happen. So, I mean, certain characters you don't want to scramble with. And Naoto's one of them, Bang is one of them. You don't want to box with certain characters like that because odds are you're not going to win. What if I told you my answer for this, though, is me just pressing like dash 5D, dash 2D, and Kide? What if I told you I can just sit here in this spot? I could just do this. Stand right here. Use my drives. And just do this, and just chill. I can 5B, I can 5C as well. I can just chill, though. I have game state. Your back is to the corner. My back isn't. You have to get out. I don't have to do a damn thing. Like, I want you to think about it like this. You know what? Another character is really easy. I could just point out with this. I could just do this. Boom. The amount of threat this has at this space is insane. The implied and explicit threat from 5C at this range, at this health total, is insane. Because if you have the bar, obviously it goes into a kill situation. You could do whatever you want. Like, Azrael, in this space, like this whole box between where S is standing to where Azrael is standing, yeah, sure, S can try to box. She could 2B, she could 3C, she could 5C, she could do whatever. She can jump out. She could try to do something. But what if Azrael just stands here? Congratulations, you jumped out late? Die. Or you blocked it? False. The Rainbow of Sadness. The Rainbow of Sadness and Game State Advantage are roughly the same thing. To people who don't know what the Rainbow of Sadness is, look at Greed Sever. The way that it arcs, it punishes a lot of, movement. It's an overhead, obviously, but the spacing that you would use it at makes it harder for your opponent to do certain things. Naoto has a Rainbow of Sadness. It's just arced a little bit differently because of his buttons. In fact, though, he has a literal Rainbow of Sadness, and it's the button people think is the worst button of all time. 6C. Do you see how 6C arcs? Not to say I'm going to use 6C in some of these situations. Obviously, if your opponent is awake, they're going to do something. But another character that has something similar, Ragna's Blood Scythe. Come on. S5D functions the same way. Instead of just putting her in the air, it literally, like, unironically, it draws a line. What do you do, like, if you're in the corner, right, and S just draws the line of, like, 5D. Like, boom. That. What do you do? Do you jump? Do you try to, like, press? Like, without even factoring in character-specific counters to drives or whatever, if you are forced to block this move and she does nothing, what are your options? How do you get out? Because you want to know something crazy? The way the line is drawn from here, and especially from the spacing of blocked 5C, 5D, 6B covers this range, dash 3C covers the ground if you try to jump out, 2B will catch jump startup. Like, she can sit there and either press her advantage in this situation to catch certain escape options, or wait. Why would S wait? I don't know. When I have the buttons is literally like, I don't know, the size of Eastern Europe. You can get out, and I'm gonna jail you back to the ground. And being jailed back to the ground, back into the spacing that I want you to be in. You cannot barrier, and I'll stay perfectly still. Like, I mean, sure, fine. Don't barrier. Like, the pushback is worse, but then I could just... boom. And then the line is drawn again. Because now she sits back up. You can't cover this. You're blocking. But S is not getting any advantage either. And sure, you don't have to bury or anything. You can get chipped. You can sit there and try to instant block everything, and that's cool too. But what happens when you start getting your inputs targeted? What if she just starts drawing more lines and starts enforcing her advantage? Like, if she has the life lead, S is like Twinkle Toes. She does not have the life total, and her close range isn't like super high, but then she gets put in like around the midish range right here. And she can just force things. Boom. And she's back where she drew the line. At this point, you have to guess whether or not the pressure reset is going to happen, or if she's going to try to enforce her turn, especially considering this is 0. Like, Ragna can do dash 5B. I mean, you can, but what if I just sat outside of range and then started, like, using my bigger buttons to keep you at bay? What if I wanted you to do X, Y, or Z, and you moving helps me? Naoto is the exact same way. The amount of times I will knock somebody down, get pushed around, like, here, and do this. What do I lose?
さっさと始めよ
Really, what do I lose here? If you've ever watched me play and you see me do this, it's because I'm going to stop you from jumping. If I'm right here, you have to commit to a dash input to try to stop me. And what if I just did this? What if I just waited and did literally anything else? Doubly if I have my resources. What do? You have to wait. You have to wait or you have to gamble. And Naoto's a character where if you gamble wrong, I will beat you. You die.
うさっさと始めよ
I've watched people gamble against me and lose 6K. Simply because they thought now's the time. And it's like, yeah, it's the time when I allow you, when I give you the luxury of it being your time. It's not your turn yet. Do something else. And yeah, Kobe, like you're saying it right there. Like, you can mash. Yeah, congratulations. I'm going to put you back to the corner. And now I have positioning. I have advantage. I have both. I have the game state, and game state could not just be positioning. It's resources. If I have meter, you're staying there. Because even if I'm wrong, I have an out. If I have overdrive, it's even worse. Because now you can't afford to mess up. Because if you're in kill range, and this goes for any character, and I have OD, you lose. Or at least I'm an advantage.
うさっさと始めよ
But sure, let's talk about hypotheticals. What if your opponent has overdrive, right? What if, oh, you don't want to take this chance because they're gonna ODOS, or they're gonna do this, or they're gonna do that, or they're fuzzy jumping, or they're whatever, right? Realize, if you do that,
うさっさと始めよ
unless they gamble again, because I'm guilty of doing this. Sometimes I'll GCOD or I'll just raw OD on wake up. Granted, it's RPS now. It's a little skewed in my favor depending on what they press, but things happen, right? If that does not work out for me, I've given up
さっさと始めよ
my resource. My opponent has not. Now, I'm on the back foot a bit. Unless you're playing a character with like a resource generating overdrive where like Izioi can do wake up OD, get her ass beat and still get four stocks minimum. Right? Now she has a resource. Or like Rachel getting her ass beat, but now she has full win stocks, or she'll just do something or whatever.
うさっさと始めよ
Just anything can happen, right? The fact that I made you spend something to try to escape means you have given me more than anything. Because now that crutch, that system mechanic, does not belong to you anymore. And that's how I play. I play with the intent to force certain
うさ
things
っ
out
さ
of
と始
people.
めよ
Because if I get that, it makes my job easier. Health totals game state, overdrive is game state, meter is game state, positioning is everything. Everything tends to coalesce into this odd dynamic between you and your opponent, which is why no matter what,
うさっさと始め
even
よ
if you're beating your opponent's ass, it's still a two-player game because anything can happen. But if you play just enough to give your opponent so little to work with compared to you, you're just fine. You're sitting pretty. There's literally a time and place for everything.
さっさと始めよ
I don't simply play to disintegrate my opponent. I mean, I outplay you, I beat you, and then you blow up. Your decisions make my job either easier or harder. That's it, really. So to wrap that point up, essentially, game state advantage and positional advantage realistically are the same thing because I am allowed to do what I want. You now have to combat my options. And slowly but surely, I will take your options away from you. Because now you have to do more. I don't have to commit to the mix-up unless I really want to, unless you've used up your resources, unless I've fried your brain and stacked you so hard mentally that you have to guess, you have to do something, you have to mash DP, you have to mash jab, and then I call you out and then you lose. It's the removal of options that makes the advantage that much worth it. And not just by, overwhelming your opponent or playing a set play character in any game or whatever. It's literally, you have your options. My job is to take your options away from you while you're still able to play the game. If I am able to do that much, then I have beaten you. Next point. Now I can talk about system mechanics. Did you know that obviously instant blocking gives you a lot of active flow generation? Did you know that moving forward gives you active flow generation? Did you know that just hitting your opponent, blocking mix-ups, teching throws, gives you overdrive generation? Using meter, RCing, crush trigger, super, all of that gives you active flow. Obviously, for everybody who's in this chat, they already play the game. They already know. It's common sense. But obviously, there's a time and place that you want active flow to proc, and this is why, if you look back at my diagram, I call this the Fenrich theorem. Now, I don't have video evidence of it right now because, frankly, I'm a little technologically stupid. So I just didn't bother setting up the video. But we've all seen Fenrich play. We've seen Fenrich fry anybody, and then, Fenrich procced active flow with counter hit 5C OD, and then he did 7k for no reason. And things like that, right? Thinking about it, why do you think that is the case? What does he do for that to obviously work? You can tell sometimes Fenrich just like crush triggers. He'll do 6A sometimes because obviously, landing your overhead or doing it overhead will give you active flow generation. Fenrich is the master of the game system. It's not even that he's doing anything like overtly like incredible, like he's doing this mind-bending tech that is allowing him to just take the controller out of his opponent's hands and he just automatically generates active flow and then he kills you for it. No. He knows when to instant block. He knows when to IBB. He knows when to use the system. And what this means. How many times have you done something in a game to where you want to generate active flow and then you accidentally proc active flow? And now you have to deal with the fact that your active flow is going away. You have to deal with the fact that to preserve your active flow, you might have to pop OD and then you're going to be out of kill range, and then you have to deal with all of this little intricate little moving parts in the rest of the round. And I'm bad at this. Like, I've gotten better at utilizing the system, but I'm bad at like managing my active flow to an extent. So, what does this mean? Less so of a lesson and more so of an experience for me. I like popping overdrive early, or I overdrive to kill, or I overdrive through whatever slow recovery move people, the standard, right? I OD early and I try not to end in EA because giving myself OD early and generating my active flow means in 1 to 3 interactions, I will proc attention. And if I get that and then do the littlest thing, I will get active flow. And then now for the next 10 seconds, you can't get hit, because if you get hit, I will kill you. It's things like that. And sometimes you want active flow early, sometimes you want just damage, sometimes you don't have the luxury of doing things like Kobe's in the chat. He'll do a fucking overdrive combo, get all 4 seals, and get EA plus, everything he needs to probably do Shipugeki, and then fry you for it. Or like sometimes Jin players will do early combo overdrive, not proc EA, get active flow later, because this is the craziest thing. If you know how to use your overdrive, you will get 2 of them in a round. SKD is like the god of doing this, because he plays a character in Izoi which not only allows him to generate resources early, popping OD gives you active flow points. And then he just needs to play the game normally. If you put him to low health, congrats. You get active flow sooner if you're at lower health. You get your burst back earlier too. So there are times where you can OD early and OD again to seal around, or to save yourself, or to do something. That's good resource management. That allows you to do whatever you want while not losing out on a return. And now we could talk about this inversely in Burst. Burst is not bad. Don't let anybody who doesn't play this game tell you that bursting is bad, because, you don't get active flow, you don't get this. Bursting is there to save your life. Of course you're not going to get active flow. Of course you're going to stop yourself from doing X, Y, or Z. And that's fine. Sometimes you want to be able to get your turn, return to neutral, do this, do that, and just play the game. And that's fine. However, I'm tired of you niggas bursting 5 to 7 seconds within the start of a round. Unironically. Bursting first hit. Bursting second hit. Is the 2 to 3K combo really that bad that you want to burst? Do you really want to return to neutral? That bad? Now you're down a resource. Now you don't have anything. It's not even that losing active flow is important. It's that bursting in certain situations rids you of advantage. You lose everything. Not just active flow. That's good. Bursting people into the corner is acceptable. Bursting people in a way where you can position yourself to win, or position yourself better to not deal with the oncoming cap that's about to be thrown at you, fine. Why are you bursting within the first 7 seconds of a round? What do you get? Well, I can get my burst back at the end of the round. Okay, that's cool. Now I'm going to start, hitting you with the 8-town stomp for the next 30 seconds. And if you don't get your burst back, and I have my overdrive, and I manage my resources, congratulations. I'm going to kill you faster. I win the overdrive race. I win resources. I win my positioning. I win everything. What do you win for bursting early like that? You're not fighting Arukune. You're not getting hit by Hakumen's 6C round start. You're not getting hit by charge 6D. You're not getting hit by these fatals that will instantly evaporate your health. If bursting Susanoo 6B, sure, on fatal. Bursting those things are okay. I'm hitting you with a jab. Why are you bursting? What do you get? Are you that unconfident in your defense and your ability to come back from a deficit like that to where you're going to throw that away? You're not a new player. You have no reason to burst early like that. And even New has a reason to keep her overdrive, because then she just kills you with her OD. Sometimes if she ever gets the ability to, sure. But what do you get?
さっさと始めよ
If I see y'all burst within the first 7 seconds of a round, and it's not for a good reason, you're not trying to avoid curse, you're not trying to avoid a Carl Clover sandwich situation, you're not trying to deal with Relius and Ignis cap, you're not getting hit by fatals, you're not getting hit by whatever, unless it's an accident, if you burst, I'm stealing something out of your house.
うさっさと始
You've
めよ
given me your burst, give me something else. In fact, empty your pockets. Getting hit is okay. Sometimes it's fine. Hey, Ashix. Oh, sweet. So, like, that's a simple point. Like, if you look at how Fenrich uses, like, burst and overdrive, like, Fenrich is gonna burst. He
さっ
bursts
さと始めよ
often, right? But if you notice how Fenrich uses the system as it assists you, obviously. Like, this game system is so generous, it allows literally most characters that aren't, like, gimped by one major thing or another to function within it. At that point, everything else falls on the character.
うさっさと始めよ
But then I see people burst within the first 5 seconds of a game, not get hit by a fatal. They'll take a counter hit that, at worst, is going to do 4k, maybe 4.3, maybe, depending on character. Some of these characters require a resource, or you got hit by something you shouldn't have been getting hit by. But you're bursting a jab and you return to neutral.
うさ
You
っ
get
さ
hit
と
by
始め
2A
よ
and you burst? You return to neutral, and this... Ooh. So I'm going to tell you right now, like, say you're playing Kagura, right? And you don't like the situation you're put in, and you burst me back into neutral, who really wins? Alright
さっ
then,
さと
you're not
始め
winning.
よ
You put me back in my... You gave me advantage. You gave me advantage. Who's winning? Yeah, your buttons are huge. Okay, approach me then. Approach me with no resources. I dare you. Crazy how this also plays in the game state advantage, by the way. Okay, next point, and something Toedo did to you, Kobe, at C Otaku. Cutting your combos early is actually, like, really smart, funnily enough. Now, I bet you're wondering why. Like, I don't know how to set this up. So you've seen... How many times has anybody played me and seen me stop right here instead of going for, like, dash 5C DP? And just committing to the safe jump? I lose 200 to 300 damage. And at most I'm getting a safe jump. It's like, I could have went for max damage. I could have probably spent, unless it's to kill you. Why didn't I do that? The amount of hits and the base damage of the move you get hit by aids to burst regeneration. If memory serves, somebody can correct me on that. So, cutting my combos early allows me to rid you of a resource, because now you're not getting your overdrive back. Unless I have to kill you and you're going to get it back, I have no reason to do certain things. Especially if you're familiar with kill ranges. Like, I'll still try to hyper-optimize everything for this character, but oftentimes you see me stop early. Especially if I know you have to OD to get out of a situation to beat me for doing something, or you have to burst. Damn, them dogs are loud outside. Jesus. Thinking about it like thus. Is somebody getting, like, beat up outside? Jesus. Okay. Thinking about it as thus, where cutting your combos early will stop overdrive regeneration. It's a nice way that if you know your kill ranges, you can set yourself up into stacking your opponent. And, obviously kill. It's kill ranges. Simple things like that. If I stop my combo here and then hit you with 2B, 2B common starters going to like 3.2k. 2B 5C 3C Kide dash 2C or CDP ends in about at worst 2.9k if you don't even do the combo right.
こいつはどうよスラッシュカイドスラッシュカイド
So 2.7, right? And that's like 2.93k. And then I do it again. Average health in this game is 11k. I hit you with 3 common starters into about 9,000 damage worth of health. Now you have to guess. But you want to burst, don't you? What happens if you bursted early or you OD'd early and I rid you of that opportunity? Now you have to rely on mashing, blocking, you have to trust your defense or using the system. But now I'm still at advantage because I've rid you of one mechanic. Taking that completely off the table for you. Now you have to do obtuse responses or mash. Or do literally anything else to try to call me out for doing something. Fuzzy jump, try to get the hell out of there. Because if I hit you again, and especially if I have OD, this goes into 4K. Well, if I have a bit more health, but who really counts? 4K, just about 4K. What if I close the game with that? And you have no opportunity to burst out of it. If I spend meter, that's 4K. 4.3, maybe 4.4. Next point. Funnily enough, these 2 points actually coincide. I don't even know how I managed to do that. I didn't even think about how I would segue my talking points like that. I just started typing on my outline and it works. So, looking at the outline again. Mental stack, the Eternal Bruh moment. It is the Eternal Bruh moment because everybody's dealt with something crazy. Everybody's dealt with not jumping like Ragna Dead Spike. I've had people so afraid of this that I will do this. I've done this to people. That's mental stack. That's a guessing game. I have literally done 2 things by doing this. I've checked your responses, if you bury it or not, if you're doing something, if you try to jump, if you're going to mash. And going to mash against this is funny because the reason why I do 6B a lot, even though 6B is usually where Naoto's pressure reset turns start to become a little bit more obvious, I do it again if you mash low. I go low. Strings. Or no, there's like a 2 or 3 frame gap. Because I could just delay it and catch you mashing. Now you're stacked. Now you have to worry about Rekka. You have to worry about 6B. You have to worry about Rekka. Okay, so I do this, boom, pressure reset, or I do a mix-up. Now you have to worry about the fact that my 2A, 2B lows will catch your IB or your fuzzy jump attempts. 3C is always on the table. 3C is -4. 3C is -4. Now, granted, not every character has a luxury like that. But if you look at some characters like offensive structure, yeah, you could just mash. You can mash DP. You could do this. If you're blessed with a good DP, you could do that. You could do whatever, right? But now, your 3C should give you a warning that you need to take your medication if you're 3C'ing from full screen. I say the exact same thing to Susanoo players who Grand Viper from full screen. But, this is what I mean. And like, implicit, explicit threat against mental stack is crazy because I have stopped here. People have expected me to run at them, and I will just wait and I walk, and then I see SDP, and then they lose. And that's euphoric. They lose because I forced a response out of you because you started to think too hard. Granted, you can also stack yourself by thinking too hard about your opponent's options too. Realistically speaking, you could just keep it super, super simple. You don't have to think about a lot of things too hard because the moment you start to overthink your own options, you start creating blind spots on how you play your game. And it's happened to me all the time because I'm worried about the DP, and then I have to really think about it. What's so bad about taking 1.2k compared to anything else? Now you gotta like leverage your decision making. This also goes back to game state and positional advantage. You have to leverage your options. Like, Naoto's really good at that. Suzuno feasts on people getting scared. Because, funnily enough, back to about stacking yourself, you can stack yourself into a burst bait. And Chaotic says all this best. What is the problem of being bursted when you have the life lead? Why are you going to try to take their burst? What do you get out of that? I mean, serotonin, maybe. Sure. But, like, what is the worst thing from taking the burst when you have a 30 to 40% life lead? Like, it doesn't mean anything. And honestly, this goes into my next point of active and passive defense. So, I'm a habitual masher. I'm insane with it. Sometimes I will let 3 to 4 DPs rip back to back to back, and I'm dumb for doing it because I have other options, but I tend to stack myself into one side. Sometimes I tend to GCOD when I know people are going to try to like go through their whole strings, and then I look dumb when I GCOD to 5A, and I have to guess between EA or DP or trying to take my turn, and then I lose. And that rids me of everything. I do that a lot. I do that more often than I've ever done because I'm trying to implement overdrive into my game plan more when I also don't really need to. Sometimes blocking and jumping forward helps you deal with so much because now what you have to worry about is lessened. Granted, you don't want to always try to hold north when you're being pressured. I love it when people do that because then I kill them for it. Like, it's okay. Sometimes you barrier block, use the system. That's what the system is there for. Like, instant barrier is one of the most cranked system mechanics I've ever seen in anything, because imagine for a little bit of cost of your barrier, you push your opponent halfway across the country. Now you can get out. You don't even need to jump. Now you can hold forward. You can press your advantage against your opponent. Yeah, exactly. It allows you a way of getting your opponent away from you without putting yourself in a compromised position. Same thing with instant block. Instant block is there to create gaps to get out. Instant barrier is there to make... It's like IB's there for you to press buttons. IBB is there for you to get the hell out. I mean, you could also try to press buttons on IBB. 3 frames instant block, 1 frame barrier, so that's 2 plus 2 blocks done. No. No, it's plus 2. It's plus 2. Or minus 2 blocks done, not minus 3. Because of 1 frame of barrier and IB. So, yeah. So, not only are they, like, further away, like, this is obvious common sense stuff. And it's funny because I'm talking mainly in, like, a BlazBlue context, because that's the game that's on my screen right now. That's the game that's on. That's the game I press buttons in. This game we all play. Most of us in this like chat. You could attribute this sort of thing to any other fighting game that allows you to. If you have the ability to create a way to escape, or you prey on your opponent's offensive habits to make
さっさと始め
pathways
よ
to
う
escape, or you do X or you do Y, you mash, active defense. Using the system is a bit more passive, but you're actively doing something, so I mean, it all kind of shakes out into its own funny dynamic. Just being able to do something to force your opponent to change their options.
さっさと始めよ
This goes back to the mental stack. It forces them to think about other things. It's like how I tend to over-rely on charge drives in some block strings or neutral situations when I can just do the uncharged version and call out whatever happens next.
うさっさと始めよ
That works. Alternatively, I just hold up. Because I love holding up against characters like Bullet. What are you gonna do? Stop me? Go on. Snap hands. Do something. Try to stop me. It's not gonna work. Your best bet is 6B or meeting me in the air. But God forbid if I have to deal with grappler RPS, especially from her, whew, I'm holding up. I am holding up. Y'all got it.
うさっさと始めよ
Exactly. Then we get to, that's going into like character specific stuff. And now, my favorite part. I get to talk about this. Also because I was requested to bring this up as a
うさっ
topic.
さと始めよ
Going back to this diagram. The life lead. Your opponent, their damage, the risk, the reward, and you. So,
うさっさと始めよ
inherently, what the hell does this mean? Well, more character specific topics right here, but have you ever seen, everybody's like seen this, right? Where, I'm gonna put the characters on screen to make this even funnier. Like, just do, make it like easy. You ever been in a position where you see this street shark filled with ecto cooler staring you down? He's like about like, you know, here, right? And you're about, say, here, right? Susan knows what happens when you like pour Mountain Dew Tampico and high octane gasoline in somebody's fursuit. But Ragna, Twinkle Toes, 10k health against, you know, Susanoo, the big nigga on the scene. 6B and then they die, right? And now you have to play around this fact. Like, you know, Ragna has to be around here to, you know, stuff like this. Stuff like that, right? And you have to play around this. You're not really opening him up. You have to play around the fact that if this motherfucker does this, you will lose, probably. If he does this, you die. You're so afraid of the fact that big damage character, big health character, if I mess up once, I die, that guess what you ended up doing? You have mentally stacked yourself. You put yourself in a position to lose. And I'll explain that really quickly. For worrying about dying, worrying about overdrive, worrying about all of these options, what are you not doing? You're not playing the game. And this is something I think a lot of people have lost themselves in the sauce in a lot of situations, or in a lot of like other instances of they're so worried about the explicit threat of their opponent, they are depriving themselves of ways to beat them. instead of just playing the game that is in front of them. Imagine being so afraid of playing the game that you've effectively committed yourself to saying, I will get hit by this thing and I will die, instead of, there's a chance I can, but if I play solidly enough to stop my opponent from getting the opportunity of doing X, Y, or Z, I don't have to worry about it. What is there to worry about? Just play the game. And I mean, I know, I play a character with 11.5k health. It might be a little bit capped to just say, yo, you could just play the game. You could do X, you could do Y. And then look at these 10k health characters. I look at Lambda with 10.5. I look at Lee with 10k. I look at Ragnar with 10k. I look at Celica with 10k. But then you think about it really hard. You can look for your opponent's options without depriving yourself of your own. What do you get by stopping yourself from playing the game? You're going to make yourself lose. You don't get anything from it. Like, picking your spots naturally in this type of situation was like, it's just running your common game. Yes, keep risk reward in mind. You don't want to go for the dumb, stupid, slow move sometimes unless you know your opponent is in your pocket right now. Unless you know that they're mentally stacked, they won't respond, and you know they're not awake, they're not doing this. But like, if you're going to constantly think about all of that, you're better off just not doing anything then. You can still check responses while being cautious. You can still pick your spots. Like, I don't want to deal with like Susanoo mashing these things in neutral and I have the life lead when I can just chill, take it easy. I can look. Like, oh, people are gonna overdrive through my 6D and I'll lose. I mean, yeah, that is an option on the table, but that's when you start varying your offensive structure to let things not happen. Sometimes you don't have to dash after dead spike. Sometimes you don't even have to dead spike. Sometimes you just do that to catch them. You don't have to do too much. You don't have to do too little. You just have to think without overthinking, without putting yourself in a cycle, in a circle. You don't have to put yourself in like this cyclical nature of, if I do X, my opponent will do Y. Because that's when you start automating certain things or dialing certain things in. That's bad. Whether, like, I've seen situations in, like, say, BB Tag, where I've seen people, like, automate how they respond to certain things instead of just chilling out. Granted, team game, you know, different context. You don't want Yumi booting you down, doing whatever, pressing buttons, and then you get fried for it. It's like, oh, I should have known to do it. No, that's not what I mean necessarily. It's more like you need to think less while also being cognizant. Because if you think too much and rid yourself of your options to play the game, your opponent will take advantage of you not playing the game. It is a two-player experience. Do it. The more thought you put in, say, not, you know, the simplest way to do this is play to win, don't play to not lose. Because if you play to not lose, you're playing scared. You're playing as if there's always something that can happen, and at that point, let it happen. Your opponent beats you. At that point, it's on you to do something different to let that not happen without thinking yourself into a rut, without throwing yourself off, because in that split second you think too hard about a situation, you lose. You will lose. If your opponent calls it out, you will lose. And then you're going to be mad. Yeah, I have to deal with like yeah, like Ragna will do fucking shit like that, right? And then you die. Oh, wow. Yeah, I'm gonna upload it. Wow, you took 5.9 because you did that. Because you tried to keep your turn. And it's gonna happen. It's going to happen. It's on you to not think that it's always going to happen. It's on you as a player to just do what you can, not overextending your reach, just taking it easy. Staying within your own head, because if the moment you think yourself too hard into a situation, that's it. Your opponent beat you. And yeah, Sakanto, people forget that player tendencies go a long way. Like, they only go so far. Like, yeah, obviously, like, if I'm feeling myself, if I'm awake, my hands are there, and I'm fighting somebody, and I see, like, a very telegraphed situation that I can OD through, I'm gonna do it. I'm not gonna do it 100% of the time. I'm gonna do it, though. Like, y'all saw me at CEO Otaku. I folded. Because I wasn't doing certain things to win. I wasn't playing within my own realm of control. And control is a major part of all of this. You have to play within control. All you have is control of what you can do. You can also manipulate what your opponent can do. But what you need to not do is think that every single response is going to be a death knell. Because if you start thinking of that, then you're going to think everything is a counter, that you can't do this, you can't do that, you can't do X, you can't do Y, and then you've taken yourself out the game completely. This happens in sports too. Tennis, basketball, like, this happens all the time. And nobody's ready for me to do the basketball fighting game talk. Maybe some other time. I was about to stop in like 5 minutes anyway, because I actually need to go. But alright, let's do a quick summation of everything we talked about today, because it was a lot. Movement is literally the simplest thing, but it's also one of the hardest things to grasp, because, again, being able to, like, manipulate where you go, using your secondary air options as a means of calling out your opponent, doing stuff like that. Oh, I can sum it up to showdown in 30 seconds. Like, just knowing how to control the space that you have, because you can walk yourself to the corner, that's bad. You can box jump, box dash, and everything your way to the corner. You're giving your opponent free real estate. Know how to properly maneuver yourself across the screen. Place your buttons in a way where your opponent has to either avoid interaction or interact with you differently. Because God knows how often people will, like, try to do a Susan JC and then it clocks them on the head. And then that's their ass. This also leads into positional and game state advantage because, again, you're in control. You have control over this. You can rid your opponent of certain responses, which also goes into the resource usage topic. You can position yourself in a way where your opponent is forced or they have to think differently about the situation. Because now they are forced to do something else. Spacing on buttons, calling out response. They have to do this, that, or the third. Like, sometimes cutting your combo is cool. If you want to cash out damage because you're super confident in that, you can. But don't forget, it's very, very doable to leave options off the table from your opponent. Imagine being able to hit somebody, maybe they're trying to wait for the resource to come back, and then you flip the table on them. Now they can't do that. Congratulations. You're in control. Stacking yourself with active or passive defense, or stacking yourself on offense against your opponent, especially if you have the life lead. It's just, it all goes back into the same thing of being able to control what you can. Because if you can't, well, guess what? You've thrown yourself out of sync. Now you're hyper focused on everything. This is just as much on defense too. How often have you done something on defense? You've DP'd, you probably DP'd a lot, and then you're just like, I'm not going to do that because my opponent is always going to be ready for this and that, whatever, and so on and so forth. You can still gauge the risk. It doesn't mean the option is completely removed, but now you have to pay attention. Because now your opponent can start trying to remove options from you, because now you're thinking differently. And I mean, y'all sat here for about an hour and a half and listened to me talk, when the ultimate, like, TLDR is you have complete control of what's in front of you. At that point, it's just refining your craft and doing what you can to win. Thinking harder, or thinking more deeply, thinking a turn ahead. Thinking long term is what I call it, and something I've stolen from somebody else. Because you can quite literally just do enough. If you're interested in the BKC video, I'll probably post that in the stream chat. Actually, I could just grab it right now. Just post this in my own Discord. Knowing my ass saw some shit like that. And thank God. Oh.
As great.
Didn't mean to grab that. Probably gonna hear that in the thing real quick. Alright, it's 7:40. I got questions for 2 minutes. Anybody want to ask me anything before I leave? I will be uploading this on my YouTube, and I'll probably just, like, pin that. But yeah. I don't mind. You can just at me on Discord if you want to talk more about this. I'm not afraid to talk about it. Can you make a tier list right now? My tier list is I'm better than everybody on planet Earth, and everybody in C tier is everybody that's below me. So y'all can hold that. I ain't making no goddamn tier list. Tier lists are not my forte right now. I think character strength is in a funny spot. But when it comes to tier lists, my biggest and most immediate response is hold my nuts. Y'all got that? Alright, anybody else? This was fun. I don't mind doing another chat, anything like this. But what's the number one thing you would say that mid level needs to work on? System. Use the system. Literally, just let the system help you. Don't always try to necessarily out gimmick your opponent, because sure, gimmicks are cool. Like, I do gimmicks all the time. I love Phantom Pain unblockabling people all the time. I do it all the time. But eventually you need to treat that like Chekhov's gun. You have to let your opponent the option is there. It's just when you let it rip. Using the system and relying less on gimmicky offense is really, really cool. Because the moment you just stay cool and stay solid, no matter what, even if you lose, you played solid, you had multiple opportunities about playing your opponent. Instead of playing in like a super herky-jerky way that hinges on the lack of knowledge. Because then somebody's going to come around who is knowledgeable, and then that's your ass. Alright, I got what, 2 or 3 more questions, and then I actually have to go. I love answering questions because my brain is like, I'm totally smart sometimes, and then I can actually like pinpoint certain things that people want to actually know about. I can try to help them out. If that's it, I'm gonna probably cut the stream now and actually just upload the VOD, pin it to my Twitter. I hope this helped in some sort of way. Hopefully I was able to get my thoughts across in a concise way. Like, if you want a more like elaborate kind of talk, a bit more nuanced, SKD's like video on defense is really good because he kind of talks about the things I tried to talk about in the last half and sort of kind of glossed over, but it helped. If anything, if you play this game and you want to just like obviously improve and you just want to get better, I'm not saying like I'm the best or anything. It's just my opinion, but obviously anybody can be good. Literally anybody can be good. I think things that need to be like constantly avoided is just the reliance on a lack of knowledge. Like, it's always good to outsmart your opponent in ways they obviously can't counter, but or at least they don't know how to counter, but playing solidly, playing in a way where you know that you can just beat your opponent, like, calmly, concisely. Even if you play wild, if you want to be considered wild, you could still play strong. A fundamental sense of BlazBlue, especially just relying on the system that is given to you, the game will carry you. The game will legitimately carry you. So just keep at it. And don't listen to anybody who tells you need to learn like every single little bit of minutia about your character or about any other characters in the game. Partly they're lying. The fact that you can sum up what characters do like in a sentence and a half is important. And people have this like idea of BlazBlue being this ultra complex game, which it is hard. It is complex to an extent. There are certain things characters get away with and they could just do that when you're first learning can be seen as, well, nobody was supposed to know that. How was I supposed to know that about X, Y, or Z? And then, you look at the character, you literally read what their drive does, and in the second and a half, you kind of just figure it out. At that point, it's just understanding special cancels or not, or what their overdrives do. Drives are very, very simple in practice. But, I talked a bit too long now. So, be easy, y'all. And, just keep practicing. God, I love this game.